Autophagy literally means self-eating, and that kind of sounds bad, but it's actually a wonderful thing because it's very selective. What your body does in its incredible intelligence is at the cellular level, it goes in and it figures out what parts aren't working as well as they should have, what parts are aging more than others, and it finds those, eats them, removes them, and allows there to be a replacement of newer cellular components.
What up, friends? Welcome back to season 7 of the Vibe with Kai podcast. I'm so glad that you're here today because we have a massive episode ahead of us. But first, I am proud to say that this podcast is presented by the incredible indie perfume house, Sucre Bay. If you've been following me for a minute, you know that I am obsessed with good storytelling. And that is exactly what Sucre Bay does. They put stories in a bottle. They are geeky, they are an independent company, they are female owned, and they make sense that actually makes sense. They make you feel something. In fact, we even collaborated on a scent called Why Did I Walk Into This Room? And it's for all my ADHD friends out there. It smells like cherry pie, cinnamon, and radical self-acceptance. It's basically my ADHD brain in a bottle. Go to sucrebay.com and find the scent that tells your story. Okay, my friends, now let's talk about food. And let's be honest, usually when we talk about nutrition and longevity, it usually feels like we're being scolded. It feels like we have to eat kale 24/7 or live in a bubble in order to be healthy. But what if I told you that you don't need to overhaul your entire life just to feel better? Today, I'm sitting down with the amazing Renee Fitton. She is a registered dietitian, a longevity expert, and the director of education at Prolon. We are digging into the science of fasting mimicking diets. We talk about why this is a game changer for brain fog, how it helps with inflammation, and specifically how it supports women navigating perimenopause and menopause. Renee breaks down the science of all of this in a way that is just so compassionate. And she explains why doing a quote reset for just 5 days might be better than trying to perfect everything every single day. Also, you definitely don't want to miss the reverse the mic segment in this interview. Renee definitely put me on the spot and asked me about my biggest struggles when it comes to eating. And we got very real about my love for Italian food and Chipotle. My Patreon subscribers and my Facebook subscribers can catch that full exclusive segment, Reverse the Mic, right now on that channel, Patreon and Facebook subscribers. But for right now, my friends, get comfortable. Here is my conversation with Renee Fitton. What up, friends? I am here and I'm super duper excited to have today's guests with me right now. I'm excited to have this conversation today because we're tackling a subject that can feel overwhelming, right? The subject of nutrition, longevity, all of that. But we're going to be doing this with someone who, I guess, what I appreciate about you is that you make it feel so genuinely accessible, and like that's not easy to do. So I want to welcome my friend Renee Fitton, the hard T's. There's 2 T's in there, baby. Let's go. Renee, welcome to the Vibe with Kai podcast. How are you today?
Thank you, first of all, and I am amazing. Your energy just makes me even more amazing, I think. So thank you. I'm so excited to dig into this topic and hopefully, bring some nutrition
Yeah.
ideas that maybe people haven't ever heard of before. I think nutrition can get really boring. Like we think, oh yeah, it's just like eat whole plant-based foods, and we're like, okay, yeah, we already get that. We're just not doing it. So leave me alone.
The only reason I have this energy right now is because my Adderall just kicked in. So we're ready to go. Let's go. But no, I'm glad that you actually mentioned that because I do want to talk about how you mentioned how you blend scientific rigor with this compassionate approach, and that seems very rare. I feel like because I feel like we live in this world where when you think of longevity nutrition, you think of like, okay, I need to live in a bubble and I need to eat kale 24/7, right? So let's start there. What does it mean to eat for longevity in the real world?
Well, the beauty of what at least I practice and what I recommend to all of my audience is that there are some tools that you can integrate into your life that don't require you to do them every single day. I think what kind of becomes overwhelming about nutrition is that you think like, okay, when I make this change, I'm going to have to say goodbye to something that I love
Mm,
for the rest of my life. And no wonder that's daunting. No wonder people are resistant to making nutrition changes when that's kind of like what you feel your options are being weighed between. And so the way that I practice is with some, yes, of course, like I am a big believer in everyday nutrition change too, don't get me wrong, but I'm also a big believer in finding little things that people can do maybe periodically that give you
Mhm.
a really big bang for your buck, and are like relatively easy to achieve, and then motivate you to maybe make some other changes down the line.
How did you start? How did you even begin going down this path? Because again, this is not something that you find like a genuine, because usually people can see through the bullshit, right? But with
Mhm.
you, it's very, very genuine. How did you even go down this road, and what made you decide to take this route?
Man, I mean, it was a long way to finally get to where I am today, but I started first as a pre-med type student. I went and
Mhm.
I did Doctors Without Borders, the Canadian version, because I'm originally Canadian, and I was, supporting doctors bringing care internationally, and it was amazing, truly, like one of the most incredible experiences. And I'm very supportive of all of the work being done there. But while I
Right.
was out there, I also captured, like, when we went out there, we were giving giant backpacks, not for our stuff, not for our clothes, but for medications. And that's what we were traveling with.
Um,
Everybody just was like hoarding a ton of meds. And it just kind of struck me as a little bit strange when you're going into these remote areas and then being like, here's a bunch of meds, and then we're not going to see you for at least a year, maybe longer.
mhm.
And then we started integrating a little bit more of these lifestyle changes, like going to see where people lived, how they lived, what their homes were like, and starting to capture some of these lifestyle changes. And those were the ones that I felt were actually going to make this really long-term difference even after we left. And that started this path of what are other lifestyle changes that we can incorporate into our everyday, or some days at least,
Yeah.
to support our health long term. And that's like kind of the instigator. And that was, oh gosh, I don't even know.
When did you know? Was there a moment when you knew, like, okay, this is for sure what I want to do? Because like everything that you said, like it makes sense, and it's wonderful. And I want to get into the compassion side of this soon too. But for you personally, when did you know? Like, oh, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I want to
Oh, man. I mean, probably later than I should have. I think I like went down this path being like, this seems like really fun and cool and interesting.
do.
And then I think it really clicked for me. I was interning at Norris Cancer Institute, which
Hmm.
is one of the biggest cancer institutes and hospitals, certainly in Los Angeles, and in partnership with USC. And as part of this program, I was going and I was visiting patients that were undergoing a wide variety of cancer treatments. Some, more terminal, some, that had plenty of solutions at their ready and at their kits. But one of the patients that I worked with was just not eating at all. And
Hmm.
that was kind of, as a dietitian coming in as part of the care team, one of the many things that we have to do is just to assess how are they eating and how can we get them to eat either enough or the right types of foods to help them through their journey. But this person wasn't eating anything at all, and they were
Yeah.
just unfortunately kind of wasting away. And
Hmm.
you just could tell that he just was kinda, like, done fighting in a big
Sure.
way,
Sure.
and I went and I saw him every single day to try and find things that, he was excited about eating or that maybe he would want to try, and there are, I won't get into all of the science of this, but there's also a lot of other things going on as they're going
Hmm.
through chemo that can impact their ability to eat, so you also are restricted in your options. Anyway, fast forward, maybe on day, like, 6 of my going back every day, the nurse comes out with a tray of food, and it's all empty pieces, meaning that he ate
Hmm.
everything on his tray. She's like, "He actually ate today," because
Wow.
we had picked all of these things. Like, I literally went and I tried to hunt down some stuff that were, like, impossible to find. And
Yeah.
I cried. I had like this I had to go around the corner, shed a couple tears of just like, finally, like, we did it, and that was when I just, like it's not always that impactful that a dietitian can, make a big change in a patient care journey, but that was a really big one for me, and that's when I was like, "Wow, okay, I'm making a difference." It's not just about, like, weight loss or,
Right.
it's more than that.
Right. That must have felt incredibly validating for you, right? And
Very.
do you get like as the time has gone on, do you still get to have those validating experiences? Because like I asked because like for me, like as a content creator that talks about mental health, sometimes I'll be like working hard on something and I'm like, why am I working so hard on this? And then you get that one email or that one message or that one comment from somebody that's like, hey, you made me smile today, or hey, your video today made me go talk to my doctor. Like, and it's a very validating thing. It's like, oh yeah, that's why I do it. It's nice. Do you get to have those type of moments often?
I am so grateful that in my role today, I get those a lot, actually.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I am very lucky that now my reach to helping people is in the thousands, like,
Hmm.
monthly. So I have a lot of, really sweet messages, video messages. Maybe I can send one of them to you, Kai, so you
Yeah,
can share it, but it's like
yeah.
is speaking of tears, like, it really is so moving, and you even see it in the people whose lives you're impacting in ways that you wouldn't even know, right? So, like, nutrition, because it is, kind of core to our health and wellness,
Hmm.
it can impact so many different things. So again,
Sure.
people kind of always just jump to all, oh, it's all about weight loss or looking good, but it can impact your energy levels. It can
Hmm.
impact your confidence. It can impact your motivation to do other lifestyle changes. And that's something that to me is like way more impactful when I
Yeah.
get those testimonials of someone who's like, for the first time, this is one that I just actually got recently. For the first time in like 20 years, I actually feel like I have the energy to not have to choose between cooking dinner for my kids and going for a bike ride with my kids. I actually feel like I can do both of those things in one day. And you just heard her choking up, and it's just like those are the things that's the reason why we do what we do, you know?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned how nutrition can affect a number of things. Like for example, I want to talk about the intersection between like nutrition and even like anxiety, right? Because like I'm someone who has to manage their generalized anxiety, every single day. I know a lot of the people that watch and listen to this are the
Mhm.
same way. In your experience, have you noticed any like specific foods or eating patterns or habits that kind of act like anxiety fuel as opposed to like an anxiety extinguisher, kind of thing? Is there certain things that you've noticed?
Yes, absolutely. So, well, we know now it's like relatively well recognized that there's something known as the gut brain axis, meaning that what's going on in our GI tract and our microbiome, so all the bugs inside of our gut,
Hmm.
is deeply connected to the way that our mind works and our anxiety and even, depression. And while it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a bad diet, you're going to have anxiety, it means that it can just significantly increase that rate or the
Hmm.
risk of. And they are quite heavily tied. So we see when people do change their diet, it oftentimes can support a healthier emotional health as well. Now, it's not like, "Oh, eat this specific diet and
Right.
you won't have anxiety." Unfortunately, it's not that
That's
easy.
not how it works, Renee.
No,
That's not how it works.
unfortunately not. I
Like
wish
you're
it
not
was
saying
that easy.
I thought it was an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Like that
I
keeps the
mean,
anxiety away too, right?
kind of. There is like there's a loose, connection there.
Yeah.
Actually, I should say it's
Yeah.
actually it's a very strong connection. It's just not
Sure.
like you do this will happen.
Sure.
Um, but yes, there are certainly foods that can make it worse. I actually
Yeah.
also suffer from generalized anxiety,
Yeah.
and I can tell you for 100% certainty that high caffeine, and higher caffeinated foods like that can certainly, increase anxiety. The other
Mhm.
thing that we see in terms of, uh, just just activity in the body,
Mhm.
is that going again, like with this whole food plant based, can be really beneficial when we go for processed foods, as well as alcohol. These are two things that really require our body to do a lot of work. And
Mhm.
it also destroys our microbiome and therefore impacts that gut brain axis. So, the biggest things I would say, if you are a rapid caffeine metabolizer, not everybody is, but for some people, caffeine can be really impactful and can increase anxiety. And then the other is obviously whole food, plant based, and then reducing alcohol.
Right, right. A lot of people in my audience, specifically women, are navigating right now in their life perimenopause and
Mhm.
menopause, right? Can you explain why the metabolic rules seem to suddenly change midlife, right? And why are some things that worked at 25 going to stop working most likely when somebody hits 45 and 55?
Yes, this is an age-old question that we actually have an answer to now.
Mhm.
So what happens? It's has to do with as we age, our body changes in the way that our hormones are either activated and turned on. So as we enter into perimenopause, gradually what we see is not just estrogen declining, but other hormones are declining as well. And I think what might be a bit of a misnomer is that those hormones that, yes, are associated with fertility and sexual health are not just associated with those things.
Mhm.
They're also associated with increased metabolism, increased bone density, the ability to burn fat and support insulin sensitivity. So, all of these things that generally help you feel better, stronger, have better immunity, all of these wonderful things,
Mhm.
all of those hormones that would help with that are declining. And
Right.
so it's not just about this change in fertility as much as it is a change in a lot of things. So that's what we're essentially kind of fighting back against. So
Right.
aside from HRT or hormone replacement therapy, in the nutrition realm, one of my favorite tools in this time of life, and it's really critical because a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I'm just going to like eat less and just go like lower calorie because everything that I was doing before isn't working the way that it used to. So I must just have to eat less all the time.
Right.
Please don't do that because
Yeah.
what it's going to do is it's actually going to further drop your metabolic rate and it's going to drop your muscle density. And all of those things are actually just going to make it worse.
Mm.
So, I'm a big fan of leveraging fasting mimicking protocols.
Mhm.
Don't get scared. I know I use the word fasting, but it is a program that gives you the benefits of water only fasting, but with food. And so you get this really deep cellular cleanup and you get biological age benefits, meaning that, we're menopause is caused by aging. Like no one
Right.
can avoid it. As you age, it's going to happen. And so if we can find solutions that kind of reverse our biological age, we can kind of push back here. And importantly, the last thing that I'm going to say about this is
Mhm.
that fasting mimicking has also been able to support weight loss, but with muscle protection. And as
Mm.
I mentioned, this is a big problem as we enter
Mhm.
into perimenopause and menopause. So,
Right, right, and I I feel like a big fear that people have is the hangry factor, right? Because there's gonna be a lot of people who get shaky or are irritable when they skip a meal, right? So how does and is the I think the acronym for it is a FMD
yes.
for fasting mimicking diet. How does that support the blood sugar stability different than like water fasting?
Oh my gosh, it's night and day. So
Yeah.
when I say fasting mimicking, I really do mean you're mimicking it because you're having breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snack. You're having whole foods every meal. Um, so it's not like you're skipping anything or feeling like you didn't get anything for whatever meal. It's in my opinion even easier than like intermittent fasting where you only
Mhm.
get to eat a very small window of time. And the
Right.
best part is that it's only 5 days and you only have to do it like 3 to 4 times a year.
Mm.
So it's really quite limited on top of the fact that it's quite a bit of food for those
Right.
5 days too.
Right.
So, on top of that, you get tons of nutrients. So, on the I'm always gonna be a big proponent of the kits that come ready made so that you don't have to think,
Mhm.
and you'll get, like, a multivitamin supplement along with your breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, teas, etcetera, etcetera. So, you're
Right.
getting absolutely everything you need to support your body
Right.
during that
One of the
quote,
things that
unquote.
I love to do is like whenever I know I have a certain guest coming on, I like to talk to a couple of my audience and say like what kind of things worry you like in regards to this subject. And one of the things that constantly came up for some of these people was inflammation, right?
Mm,
So and like I think we often talk about inflammation being like the root of so many evils, so brain fog and joint
yes.
pain and mood swings. So how does how does a protocol like this, I guess, actually turn down the volume of systemic inflammation?
Okay, I took notes because there's so many
Yes.
things.
Yes.
There's so
Yes,
many things,
please.
and I wanna make sure that I touch on at least a couple of them.
Yes,
So,
please. Mhm.
inflammation is absolutely a root cause of many things, but it's also a, like, big umbrella term. There's a lot of things that we kinda, like, qualify as inflammation, and some inflammation can be good. It's actually just a natural stress response to get rid of things, but chronic inflammation, that's where we get into this problematic approach.
Mhm.
And one of the ways that we can measure chronic inflammation is through a test called CRP. Um, it's known as C-reactive protein, and you can actually get it tested with your doctor.
Mhm.
Now, that has been able to be seen with fasting mimicking to decrease when somebody has elevated CRP or elevated inflammation. We see it go down. That's the beauty of using that again, kind of going back to the very beginning where you were like science based information.
Mhm.
That is something that I wholeheartedly believe in. There's about just under 50 clinical trials with fasting mimicking alone. And so I can always find something to support. And if I can't, then I wouldn't recommend it for them.
Mhm.
But for inflammation, absolutely. The other thing that is really important to note is that when we go into a deep fast, and when I say deep fast, I mean prolonged fasts, and
Mhm.
those are defined as fasts that are over 2 days. So you have to hit at least the 3 day mark, or a fasting mimicking diet that is at least 3 to 5 days, right? And once you reach that mark, what your body does is it turns on this deep cellular cleanup known as autophagy. Autophagy literally means self-eating, and that kind of sounds bad, but it's actually a wonderful thing because it's very selective. What your body does in its incredible intelligence is at the cellular level, it goes in and it figures out what parts aren't working as well as they should have, what parts are aging more than others, and it finds those, eats them, removes them, and allows there to be a replacement of newer cellular components. So it's kind of like essentially turning these cells that were aging into a younger version of themselves. Therefore, they can work better. This is also really important for inflammation, for immunity, all these other wonderful things, because our cells make up our entire body. Every system within our body is made up of cells. So if we're cleaning up every single one of the cells in our body through this process, we get a lot of benefits.
I hope everybody at home is taking notes right now because Renee is dropping some knowledge today. There's going to be a quiz at the end of this. There's going to be a quiz today. Dropping knowledge. I love it though. I love it though.
We get a little nerdy every now and again, you know?
Yeah, but you know what? You're saving lives though. And again, like I said in the beginning, you make it very approachable where it's not scary because I think sometimes people might shy away from it because they either don't understand it or they fear that if they try to they'll just get confused and they'll just do it
Mhm,
wrong and all of that. But one of the a powerful thing that you said that I really want to hone in on, and this was before we even recorded. You said you don't need to overhaul your entire life to feel
mhm.
better. Now, I have hella ADHD. I have 84K, right? And so and a lot of people that follow me, we all struggle with this kind of like all or nothing type of thought process, right? So, why is a short term intervention like a 5-day fast sometimes better than trying to change everything all at once?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's a lot of reasons. I mean,
Hmm.
if we just look at habit forming and some of the science around that, we know that choosing one thing at a time is the most sustainable. It's far less overwhelming. Of course, the idea of being like, okay, I'm going to, especially we're coming up to January, right? And January is the time of New Year's resolutions. And it's like, okay, what is this full list of everything that I want to do? And if you have that big of a list, it is almost, I mean, there's no one, not even like a Superman, could be able to achieve every single one of those things perfectly. And so then when you fail on, and I don't even like to use the word fail, when you don't do it maybe as perfectly as you planned, you feel like you failed. And now you're like, you know what? It just didn't work. And so you're kind of just setting yourself up for throwing in the towel when you do
Right.
too much. Now, with the fasting mimicking diet, there's actually been some really cool studies showing that not only are people accomplishing it in 90% of the time, right? So it's very easy to do for the vast majority of people. But on top of that, once they're done, they have a better relationship with food. They have a reduced sugar cravings, and they're more motivated to adopt other healthy lifestyle changes. For example, in one of the studies, the group that did the fasting mimicking diet actually increased their physical activity by 4 hours a week without the researchers even telling them anything about physical
Oh,
activity.
wow.
And then the control group that had to do every single day diet change, they decreased their physical activity by 6 hours a week. And that's again, it kinda comes back to this thing, which is that if you are kind of r being, I hate to say burdened because everyday nutrition change is important, but
Hmm.
when we do especially, like, pretty big overhauls of our diet where it feels burdensome, then we're like, "Oh my god, this is like the I'm doing so much already. I can't even imagine doing more than this right now." So you're not gonna add more things,
Right.
right? Whereas when you do a 5-day fasting mimicking program, you do the 5 days, you feel accomplished, you feel proud of yourself, and now you have anywhere between 25 to, like, 90 days before you do the next one, and you can start thinking, "What else can I do during
Hmm.
this time?" So,
That, that
yeah.
sounds like it sounds like a lot of mental clarity there, right? And I remember reading that there's a lot of people that actually report this like quote euphoria or like sharp focus during fasting. Is that real? And if so, is there a biological kind of reason for that brain boost? Like, how can it help somebody that's constantly living in brain fog?
Oh, I'm so glad that you asked this question.
Yeah.
What is euphoria when you fast? Let me tell you, it is true,
Uh
and
huh.
there is a biological reason as to why we feel this way. I'm actually on day 2 of my fast, so I am about a day and a half away from, like, peak euphoria, and that is because as you fast, what happens is your body starts gradually increasing levels of ketones. Ketones are produced when our body stops burning sugar for fuel and starts burning fat for fuel. It only does that because it doesn't really like to burn fat for fuel. It would
Hmm.
much rather use sugar. It only does that when we have no sugar left. So it really only happens when you're eating either zero carbohydrates or sugar, like in a keto diet, or when you are fasting. And so then our body starts going into ketosis. But on top of that, you are, as you go through several days, they just gradually keep going up and up and up, and your brain is just fueling on those ketones. Now, on top of that, because we're in a fasted state, so this is even leveling up on a ketogenic diet, because what a ketogenic diet doesn't do is it doesn't get you in a fasted state. It just puts you in that ketogenic state. Now, a fast puts you in the ketogenic state, plus it turns on all of these fasting pathways. So, one, as I mentioned, you get that autophagy, that deep cellular cleanup. So all of your cells are like all of a sudden cleaning up. And once those clear up, there is a lot of clarity that can even happen while you fast. And then three is that actually, fasting is a stress on the body. Now, we call it a hermetic stress because that means that it is a positive stress. Now, if you do it for way too long, it's no longer a hermetic stress. But if we do it for short periods of time, it is a very positive stress. And so our body actually has a bit of a stress response. And all of those stress hormones that are released also are really activating and energizing as well. Now, again, I will reiterate that if you do this for too long, that would be problematic. And that's also why I'm not a really big believer in everyday intermittent fasting,
Mhm.
because you are turning on that stress response every single day. And especially for my women out there that are entering into perimenopause or are in menopause, this is especially problematic. So that's why I'm a big believer in not just the prolonged fasts, but also the fasting mimicking versions of those.
We talk a lot today about the brain, right? You had mentioned the brain a few different times, and whenever I hear anything regarding the brain, I also think about the emotional side of
Mhm.
this, right? Because like there is a connection here, and like when you take away constant snacking and grazing and things like that, like a lot of people, including myself, sometimes will use that as a coping mechanism. Sometimes, because we're stressed out, or we're it's just something that brings us comfort. When that's taken away, what comes up for people emotionally that you speak with? Like, do you find that people have to, I guess, confront their relationship with food in a new way? Like, do they discover new things? Like, what has that experience been like for you?
Oh, absolutely. 100%. It's really interesting to see people go through this experience and really get connected to their internal self, because one, you're also just less busy, because think about all of the time that we spend thinking about food, planning food, making food. It takes
Mhm.
up a lot of our day. So when that is no longer there, it opens up a lot of time just to also spend time with yourself. And so there is a lot of learning that I've captured in a lot of our participants that go through the program. Um, the other thing that we have seen is there was a study that was done in depression, actually, with fasting mimicking. And while it was a smaller group, they still were able to show that the fasting mimicking diet paired with therapy, as compared to just therapy alone, was even more impactful. So it's really interesting, again, like kind of this, like, I think that's really a lot of that gut brain connection. But I think it is more than that because of that time spent internally. And I will say, just personally, that when I do the 5-day fast, I am what I capture as I'm going through the 5 days are all of these automatic thoughts or behaviors that you don't even realize until you're really put into this situation. Like, man, I just walking to the kitchen for the 4th time today, and I actually don't need to do anything. Why am I doing that? Or like, I'm watching this commercial about food and I'm actually not hungry, but I like really want this thing.
Sure.
And like you just like really do start to understand a lot of these factors that impact our food decisions, and it just forces you to go there.
Right. I'm curious what your thoughts are on supplements like the like GLP, like
Mhm.
support and like all that. I guess they kind of suppress your appetite in a way. Is that healthy? Is that something that people should ever consider? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a big question. I think that for some people they can be a good fit. Has to be working with a physician to determine if you're the right fit. Now, if you're using it for appetite suppression, I I don't I think it's really designed to be used for people with type 2 diabetes, people who are significantly overweight and need a jump start. And in anybody who's using those, you have to be aware of some of the unfortunate side effects of those things and be very, very cautious to do as much as you can to limit those. It also means that when you're on GLP-1s, you need to be on your workout game super hard.
Mhm.
It's not a magic bullet, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people who do use them are treating them that way, and then they end up being worse off than when they started. They've lost a ton of muscle mass. In fact, what they see with GLP-1s is that if you're not properly supporting with enough protein and muscle bearing or weight bearing exercise, 40% of the weight that you lose can come from your muscle.
Oh, wow.
And that is one of your most metabolically active tissues, meaning that it helps with your metabolism. And so if you lose all of that, once you stop your GLP-1, it's going to be really quick and easy to regain all of that weight back.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so, yeah, there's definitely some downsides to it, and that's why anybody who uses them should be really, really cautious about their use. And also, my final note on that is that if you do feel like it's the right fit for you and your physician is in alignment with that, start with the lowest dose possible and have a strategy on how you're going to taper off of it as well once
Mm.
you've reached your goals.
Right, right. I feel like when especially this time of year, but well, we're recording this in 2025, but by the time this airs, it'll be 2026. And obviously, as you mentioned before, 20 like a new year, like like a lot of people begin their new, whatever they plan on doing for the new year. But with that comes so many different diet trends and fads and
Mhm.
suggestions and all of that. And I think that sometimes it might just be me, but I feel like sometimes people turn a bad eye to these types of things because they'll say, "Oh, well, it's just diet culture being diet culture." It's like it's nothing. There's a lot of skeptics, I should say, about these types of things. If somebody's listening right now and they are either a skeptic themselves or they are surrounded by people that are skeptics about diet culture, what would you say to them?
I would say I completely understand where you're coming from because diet culture is real and there is absolutely a lot of negativity, I think, in the nutrition world. There are a lot of people who are getting involved in the nutrition world that maybe shouldn't be, and they may have a very loud voice, and they may be pushing people either too hard or in the wrong direction, or there's so many ways that things can go wrong when we're working around something that is so precious to us as food. And so I completely understand, and for that reason what I would say is that it doesn't mean that nutrition is evil and we shouldn't do anything at all, but rather that we should be very selective and thoughtful and evidence based and research minded when we make choices about how we're going to change. And it should be personal to you. Don't let me or anybody tell you what to do, but let people like me and other experts in the world of nutrition give you ideas that you can explore and feel out, test. If it doesn't work for you, great. Move on to the next, That's, I think, one of the biggest learnings that I have had being in this industry for, almost 2 decades and learning a lot about the good and the bad.
That actually leads directly into my next question, which is which is in regards to like social media, because there's a lot of people on social media that there's a lot of social media content creators and influencers that put a lot of stuff out there, not just from a
Right.
physical standpoint but from a mental health standpoint. Like, we experience it every single day. And I know I always tell people kind of like what you just said just now, just like, do your research, and kind of just be careful. Always consult with a professional and all of that. From an eating standpoint, a nutrition standpoint, there's a lot of content creators and influencers out there that are saying a lot of different things, sometimes contradictory of the other people.
Yeah.
How how can people navigate that if they're on that side of social media and they're looking for tips and advice and all of that? How can they navigate the wide variety of advice that is out there on social media?
So, there's a lot of things that you can look for. One that's like pretty big is credentials. Now, people who have gone through true credentials, these are going to be MDs, DOs, NDs, RDs, NPs. So these
Mhm.
are nurses, doctors, dietitians, pretty much.
Mhm.
Those are people that are bound to tell you evidence-based information. And if they steer you too far off, then they can lose their license. And so they are held up to a standard. That is one really important thing. Now, just because somebody says doctor so and so does not mean that they are in fact a doctor. They might be, and by the way, I think that chiropractors are phenomenal, but they may not have nutrition education. Um, and so you also want to understand what their specialty is. So, what did they really study, and are they certified to give you that information? Now, the next piece is, what is their uh, how long have they been in this space? How much do they really know? Are they really specialized, or are they trying to do everything under the sun? And ideally, you want to find somebody that really understands this, has worked with people in the space that they're talking about for a long period of time. And finally, are they referencing true, strong evidence? And that's kind of, by the way, a little bit of a wishy-washy one, because I would never expect anybody who has not had a degree in science to really be able to pick apart the difference between a good study and not a good study. And so just because they're flashing up trials on their thing does not mean that they're all really, really strong. But you can also kind of tell when there's somebody who has tons of evidence and they're like, and look at this, and this was, 200,000 people in here, and those are kind of the people that typically have done the research, and they're citing it and they're telling you they did the work. So between all of those things, I think they can kind of help you peel apart maybe some of the quacks from the not. But in all honesty, I'm going to tell you, it's a wild, wild west out there.
Yeah. I lost my chiropractor audience, Renee. Now they all
Yeah.
tuned out.
No,
They
they're
were
all
with us.
amazing. I love
They
them.
were all they were with us. I just, and then they were like, "Wait, what did we do? What did we do,
No, you
Renee?"
did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong. I just there's so many, and by
Yeah,
the
I
way,
get
there's
it.
so many
Mhm.
incredible chiropractors that are absolutely qualified to give nutrition advice because they have done the additional credentialing to do so. So just make sure that they
Yes.
do.
You hear that, chiropractors? Come back. Come back. Come back to us. It's totally okay. Practical application that, I wanna kinda help the audience put themselves in your shoes here, or in anybody's shoes that's actively doing this. Um, if somebody wants to try this, but they have a busy job, they have kids, they have a chaotic schedule, is there ever like a best time to do a reset, or is there never really a perfect time and you just gotta jump in and do it?
That's such a great question. I think that there's never really a perfect time, but
Mhm,
there is a best time, if that makes sense.
mhm,
So I myself am incredibly busy. I don't even have a stable home. Like, I'm a
mhm,
nomad, so I have like a PO box and I bounce around the world. So I am
mhm.
constantly on the go. And so for myself, trying to find time to do this reset is always a challenge. And it's always tricky. So for example, right now I'm doing it. I'm in Miami for 2 weeks. I was like, I finally am going to have a second. I did it at the tail end of a busy weekend, and I'm going to be doing one fasting day while I'm on an airplane to a conference. It's not perfect, but it is the best time that I could find. And that's really what I think we just need to recognize, is that we only need to do this maybe 3, 4 times a year. Find the best time that you can fit when you Jenga up your schedule. And once you find it, just stick with it and do the best you can.
Right. It's funny because a lot of times, like, for example, like, we're talking about like a 5-day kind of thing. What happens on day 6? Right? Like, I feel like that's not often talked about. Like, what, like, I guess the fear is always like the rebound binge, right? Like, how do you coach people to transition back? transition from a fasting state back to real life without undoing all of the work that they just did.
Totally. So there's a couple of things that I will say about this. One, day 6, let me tell you as somebody who has done this, now this is my 16th time that I'm doing it right now. When you hit day 6, you are naturally going to crave healthy foods. It's very bizarre. And don't get me wrong, during the 5 days, you're going to be thinking about burgers and pizzas and all of the things, you know? But come day 6, you wake up and you're like, weird. I feel like really good and I know I can eat anything I want and now I have the world as my oyster, but like my body feels really clean and I feel amazing. I feel like I should probably just keep this going in the best way that I can. So it's really interesting to see how day 6 becomes easy. And we've seen this now in surveys of 2,000 plus people that say consistently, like over 80% of people, better relationship with food, less cravings, all this incredible, kind of no, exactly what you might think as the opposite of what would happen because you'd be quote unquote so hungry. But keep in mind, you've been eating real food for those 5 days on a fasting mimicking protocol. So it's not as bad. And also what a lot of people find is that usually come day 3, 4, 5, a lot of that hunger subsides because your body is doing all this compensatory or compensative behaviors.
Mhm.
Now, on top of that, everyday nutrition, of course, is really important. I'm not going to say that you can just eat McDonald's all day, every day outside of your 5 day fast
What?
window. Yeah,
What?
I know. We all watch Super Size Me. We know what happens.
Oh man, yes. Rest in peace, Morgan Spurlock. Yeah.
Oh god. And so we know that everyday nutrition is important, but we also know from the clinical trials that have been done with fasting mimicking, and like I said, there's nearly 50 now, they specifically do not change the diet in between cycles because the researchers want to make sure that the changes that are happening are specific to the 5 day period. And what they see is that the results stick. Even after 3 months, they were able to maintain about 70% of all of the benefits. So that's why we also recommend that people do a top up every 3 to 4 months because that's typically when we would see kind of enough of a decline in the results that you would want to top back off.
Right. There is a new segment that we're doing. We're right now, we're in season 7 of the Vibe with Kai podcast. And there's a new segment that we're adding called the reverse mic, where I've been grilling you for like 45 minutes on all of these questions. And I was thinking I'd be remiss if I didn't hand you the microphone for a question. You have the floor.
Ooh,
Anything goes. You have the ability to ask me anything that you would like, Renee.
okay.
Put me on the spot. What is your
You actually are
question?
putting me on the spot to come up
I
with it.
am.
But
I love this. I love this. There, listen, people that are watching and listening right now. Renee was spitting fire today, spitting a lot of fire. Came prepared, came ready to go, came with notes and just dropped it all. I hope you were all taking notes because this is great. And there's going to be people that are watching and listening, being like, I like this Renee person. Who's this? If they want to learn more about who you are, what you do, what you offer, all that, where can they go?
well, if you're interested in connecting with me, honestly, the fastest way to connect with me these days is via Instagram. You can hit
Mhm.
me up at Fitton Nutrition. That's Fitton Nutrition. If you are curious to learn more about those fasting mimicking diets, there's 2 companies that are doing them right now. One is Prolon. Their website is Prolon, Prolon life.com. And then there's also another company that's doing it like a little bit more medically, and they add in dietitians and doctors and all the extra bells and whistles, especially good for people who maybe have medical conditions that they want support with. That's called L Nutra Health, and their website is L-Nutra health.com.
Awesome. I'm going to include those links in the description. So all you have to do is click. It's going to be there for you. The final question I always ask everybody that's a guest is, we've been talking for a minute and we talked about a lot. There's a lot of really good information, right, that came through. But if there's one thing that you want everybody to walk away with today, what is that one thing?
Oh, gosh. I think it is, obviously, I think people would assume that I would say fasting mimicking is the best, but that's actually not. What I want to say is that no matter what resonated with you from what I shared or from what you've heard from somebody else out there in the world of health and wellness, if you can pick one thing that really sticks with you as something that you are willing and able to do for even just 30 days, maybe 5 if it's a fasting mimicking diet. If it's something that you're able and willing to try, just start there. And what you will very quickly find is that when you achieve one thing, no matter how big or small, it is incredibly motivating to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And they just start piling onto each other. And sometimes the hardest step is the first one, but I would just urge you to find the one that you're the most excited to take and then just push yourself until you can start capturing and seeing and feeling all of the incredible benefits that are inevitably going to come.
I love it. I love it. Renee, you are such a wonderful, genuine person. Like I can always tell when I'm speaking to somebody that's truly genuine and sweet and kind and insightful. So I really, really appreciate you taking time out of your day to hang out with us and our little family over here, our vibers over here. Honestly, friends, all of the information in here is going to be in the notes of this episode. So all you have to do is click. I want to thank my guest, Renee Fitton. Both T's. I wanted so bad to say fitting, like without the two T's, without hitting that. Is that something that people say?
You could totally call me that. Honestly, it's so close and I kinda like it. It's got like a
Fitting.
smooth
Renee
smooth
Fitton.
energy to it.
I like that. You know what? Fitting.
I've
That's
been
what it
called
is. We're
all
going.
sorts of things, and let me promise you that one's not close to the worst. No.
It's okay. I have a unique name, and sometimes people just like are like they'll look at the K and they'll be like Cyrus. I'm like, when does the letter K ever make that noise? Like, when does that ever happen? So I always want to make sure I say people's name right because people will like totally butcher my name. But Renee, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and to everybody that's watching and listening, thank you for hanging out, my friends. How incredible is Renee. It's wild to think that our bodies have this built-in intelligence to heal themselves if we just give them a little bit of a break. I also really appreciated her take on diet culture. It wasn't about shame, it wasn't about being perfect. It was just about giving your body the tools that it needs to function. And as someone who deals with anxiety and brain fog, hearing that there are some nutritional ways that turned down the volume of all of that noise in my head, it was super validating. If you want to learn more about Renee, or if you're just curious about the fasting mimicking diet that she talked about, I have dropped all of her links in the show notes down below. Be sure to give her a follow on Instagram because she definitely drops a lot more knowledge over there. And a huge shout out to our presenting sponsor, Sucre. Seriously, go treat yourself. Whether you want to smell like a witch in the woods or a chaotic goblin, they have you covered. Check them out at sucrebay.com and look for my scent that I collaborated with them called Why Did I Walk Into This Room? That scent is a love letter to all of my ADHD friends out there. Before you go, 3 quick things. First, if you're feeling overwhelmed about your ADHD or mental health journey, head on over to my digital store. I have guidebooks on navigating ADHD in adulthood and navigating ADHD and finances. They are all designed to help you get 1% better every single day. Second, if you want to hear Renee grill me about my eating habits, join me on Patreon or subscribe to me on Facebook. It is only $5 a month and you'll get access to my entire ADHD toolbox. That includes the Reverse the Mic segment that I talked about in this episode, and also my full library of ADHD deep dive videos. And finally, if this episode helped you out today, please subscribe and leave a review. It helps us get these conversations to the people who need them the most. Once again, thank you so much for watching and for listening. As always, my friends, much love, good vibes. I'll catch you next time. Bye.